Good afternoon, I'm Asa Stackel, and we begin with breaking news out of Albany. Police have a building on Dove Street and Sheridan Avenue surrounded as they search for a person on parole. At this crosswalk, there are 5 lanes. The speed limit is 40 miles per hour, and there are lots of cars that come through during the evening commute. But a girl from Queensbury climbed to the top of all 46 of the highest peaks in the Adirondacks before her 5th birthday. Here's her story. Hey Kelly, it is a mess down here in Little Italy. We're at 4th and Ida in Troy. We got a lot of activity. Look at these guys over here. They're making the best of the snow day, sliding down. Emily, you're way up on a hill. Very smoky scene, obviously. You got there 15 minutes ago. What did it look like as you were approaching Gloversville? You heard the governor. Too good to be true. The governor cautioned those are just projections, and he's seen them fluctuate. He expects the apex of the curve in New York, the greatest load on hospitals, will come in 21 days. And a volunteer came here last night to get the concession stand open, and she put her key in the door and it just kind of pushed open. She went inside. She realized the door had been broken. The door frame was on the ground. There was gum all over the place.
And if the tugs are rocking, don't come a knocking, all right? Back to you.
All right, work hard, play hard. That's the tugboat life. Thank you, John. They'd prefer if the Hudson River flowed under the bridge and not through farmers' fields and over the road here. But here, they're just about eye level, and someone could have come through with a blade and sliced right through them. With these new kiosks, you can still pay by either coin or by card. And you want to take note of your zone number if you're paying on your phone. You put that in, then you put your license plate number in, then your credit card information. And we are following breaking news of a fire overnight at the Amar in Pittsfield. The business has been around for a long time. Remember, we made that distinction about 1995 before, and that's because lawmakers elected before 95 can collect both their full salary and their full pension. Much more closely than I was watching, because this is what I got sent by a lot of people. Apparently my jacket still had the tag on. It was in the armpit. New jacket.
Who knew, right?
Why did they put the tag in the armpit of the jacket? And now I can't even return it because people noticed.
Yeah, that's right. Where are you going to return it? Just wear it for a few days? And
wear it for a year and then take it back.
It doesn't fit, doesn't like it.
The owner told us Cost and his group got through 100 of the 102 free wings.
Almost made it. Couldn't do the last 2.
Realistically, how many wings could you eat in one sitting?
I don't know. Maybe 30?
30!
Word has it Uncle Jimmy went up to Montague Inn one time and ate 83 wings after a lasagna dinner.
By himself.
That's an urban legend on the Tug Hill. I don't know if it's true.
Did he disappear after that?
He still exists.
Oh my goodness.
Maybe mycelium will be mainstream, and fungus will, yes, be even more so among us. I had to, right?
Well done. How interesting, though.
I know. And
this product.
It was a summer studio for architecture students at RPI. That's what they were building, that thing. So we'll see how it does in the weather, and maybe we'll start building with fungus.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. How does it do in the rain and storms,
see.
and can it hold up to it? Very interesting. All right, still ahead.
Hey Kelly, it is a mess down here in Little Italy. We're at 4th and Ida in Troy. We got a lot of activity. Look at these guys over here. They're making the best of the snow day, sliding down. They were just cleaning out their cousin and aunt's car. And as you said, there is a snow emergency here in Troy. So starting tomorrow at 8 a.m., that means you have to be off the odd side of the street. Then the next day, Friday, you have to be off the even side of the street. And speaking of odd side of the street, Lou, check this out. Over here, this is a vehicle. My gosh, this is ridiculous over here. So this is a full-time job getting this thing out. They're going to have to. In Troy, our weather team says around 17 inches is how much they got. We're going to be down here all day. People are working hard to dig out, and we'll have an update for you on what's going on in Troy coming up in the evening news. For now, Asa Stackel, News Channel 13. Good afternoon, Kelly. Here's what happened. A volunteer came here last night to get the concession stand open, and she put her key in the door and it just kind of pushed open. She went inside. She realized the door had been broken. The door frame was on the ground. There was gum all over the place, and they discovered about $100 worth of snack food was stolen. Now, Matt, if you could follow me, I want to show you the other damage. There was another door damage down here. The thing about this is they left all the foods you have to prepare, like the hot dogs, the hamburgers, the chicken fingers, not touched, still in there. They also left the cash register. Nobody touched that, and the president of the Little League says that you could just pick it up. It's so small. Here's the other door here. This one they didn't get into, but they tried to pry open, breaking this part of the frame here. All that's in this part are just rakes and stuff to fix the field. And this is the part that really hurts. The hose here, apparently this was left on, and water was just spilling out onto the infield. Now, let's take a look at the pictures we have to show you why this is so heartbreaking. This was the field after 5.2 inches of rain fell on Saturday. The water was halfway up the dugouts, and volunteers worked tirelessly to get these fields playable by the weekend for a youth baseball and softball tournament. They did it. Police Chief Bob Ash was here, and he says it was uplifting. And then after everyone left around 8 p.m. Sunday night, Ash says somebody came in and vandalized the place. Here's the league president.
You know, breaking into the snack shack is one thing. The spitefulness of trying to flood the field by turning the hose on was, you know, that kind of hurt. After what we've been through with water down here.
Well, Chief Ash says if you know who did this, fess up now, because if he finds out and he comes knocking on your door, he doesn't want to hear any apologies then. He says it's a criminal mischief charge, and depending on the amount of damage to this, it could be a felony burglary. Reporting live in Hoosick Falls, Asa Stackel, News Channel 13. Kelly, back to you. Well, good evening. We just got a hold of the undersheriff. He just got off the phone coordinating this search effort. He's joining us very graciously. So tell us who you're looking for, undersheriff.
We're looking for this gentleman here. His name is Boyd Wells. He's about 18 years old, about 5'10", slender, dark hair. He was in court today and was remanded to jail, and when he was brought outside, he took off from the deputy who was also handling another prisoner. He dove into the woods, and after a brief search, we were unable to locate him, and we've now employed K9 and helicopters trying to find this individual. Last seen, he was wearing a purple shirt and dark-colored pants, and we also believe he's still handcuffed behind his back. We're hoping that somebody out in TV land can tell us that they've seen him so that we can try to bring him in quietly, calmly, and make sure that he's okay.
Do you still think he's in this wooded area back here? Is this where people should be looking for him?
We do. We don't want people looking for them.
Right.
We want them to call us and let us know if they run into an individual matching this description. And as things develop, we'll let you know. Okay?
What kind of court appearance was he here for? And
we're not going to release that information. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks, Undersheriff, for joining us. I appreciate that. As the Undersheriff said, you can call sheriff's deputies if you see this guy. Don't approach him. Again, purple shirt, gray sweatpants, and last seen handcuffed behind his back. We've seen a state police helicopter hovering over these woods here, and this is developing, so we'll bring you information as we get it. Reporting live, Asa Stackel, News Channel 13.
Nobody ever said farming was easy, but making a living as a dairy farmer in the capital region, well, that's become remarkably hard, and that's because of low milk prices.
It's gotten so bad, in fact, that the co-op that owns Cabot Cheese sent suicide prevention letters to its farmers. Asa Stackel investigates what's happening to our capital region farms.
Even on the longest days of the year, Amy hopefully is already up and working when the sun rises over her Fonda farm. Little Jacob swings between a dozen cows during 6 a.m. milking, and her husband handles the farm while she works a full-time sales job in her home office until 5. Then she's back out to the barn until 8 p.m. That's a 15-hour day, and every day of hard work, the farm is losing money. When the milk check comes in, it doesn't even cover the cost to produce the milk.
There's things we'd like to do, repairs, new buildings. All that gets put off in times like this, and we just focus on taking care of our girls. Taking care of the 75 girls is Amy's dream job. She just bought this farm 2 years ago, but already, some days, she regrets it. The hopefully say they couldn't sell the farm even if they wanted to. Wouldn't be enough to cover the debt. Nobody's buying dairy right now anyway. There are farmers who have sold all their cows and some of their equipment, and they're still in the hole. This is it.
Yeah, so this is our main milk cow barn. Used to be filled with 250 cows.
Those cows are gone now, sold last summer. It's eerie to see the empty stalls and motionless fans, the bushes growing up over all those awards they won for the quality of their milk. The roots of farming run so far back, there's a blue sign out front.
You know, I sit down with a $25,000 milk check, you know, and I have $38,000 worth of bills every 2 weeks. It just doesn't work.
LaGrange can't control what he's paid for his milk. The federal government sets the price using a complicated formula. It isn't connected to what you pay in stores for a gallon. For consumers, a gallon of milk costs about the same as it did in 2003. In 2014, farmers' prices hit a high, but they dropped about 30% in 2015 and stayed there. Farmers are getting out. There are 20% fewer dairy farms today in New York than even 10 years ago, but about the same number of cows. The 4,400 farms left are producing more milk. The state says the average cow today produces more than double the amount she was producing in 1970.
We're going to figure this out.
State Ag Commissioner Richard Ball says that's the problem. Too much milk. Dairy exports are down 3 to 4%, and with tariff talk ramping up, Ball is worried about an even bigger hit. He says the exodus of farmers doesn't have to continue, but he says dairy farmers need to look in the mirror.
Who's our customer, and what do they want, and are we meeting their needs? And I think this is where the dairy industry in particular has kind of gotten separated. We've been so good at what we do in production that we don't think about the consumer or what they want.
Still, the state is trying to get New Yorkers to buy more dairy through marketing and school programs. And in the past 2 years, the state has put $50 million into plants making dairy products with a longer shelf life, like cheese and butter. Ball says he's optimistic about the long term.
You know, today I'm more excited than I've ever been about the future of agriculture.
Back on the empty farm, LaGrange isn't as excited.
This is getting bad.
He says there's no bringing farmland back from asphalt.
You know, we need the local farmer, not only for the product, but for the local economy. And that whole picture has to be understood. And I'm worried that it's getting too late.
LaGrange has a desk job now. He's the town supervisor. His old herd is spread out among fewer, likely much bigger, farms. The Hopefullys are still hanging on in one of the few places where the cows are still known by names and not just numbers. Asa Stackel, News Channel 13. Jim Benita, the damage tells a story. Once this fire started, there was no way these people were going to get out of the front of the house, and they're lucky they got out the back.
3412 Sheriff's Dispatch on all EMS.
Officer Melinda Palmer was just driving by when she saw the fire already roaring at 25 Grand Street. It was eerily quiet. Smoke detectors weren't going off, so the officer started yelling. 43-year-old Jeremy Date came running out, but his mother was still inside. Seconds later, Officer William Chrisman and Sergeant Robert Brown pulled up and sprinted towards the house. They plunged in through the thick smoke, coughing, and got the 60-year-old out. With a cast on her arm and an oxygen tank, they carried the mother to safety. But that was just the first-floor apartment. Francis St. Andrew and his friend were still upstairs and couldn't get out the burning front door or the barricaded back door.
Thick, dark, black smoke.
The battalion chief says when he came around back, he heard noises coming from inside this stairwell. But the people from the second floor couldn't get out because there was junk piled up on the inside and on the outside of the door.
Gas grill, lawnmower, some storage cages of something.
Battalion Chief Brett Minkler threw it all to the side and pulled the two out. The two downstairs were airlifted to Upstate Medical in Syracuse, and all four are expected to recover. But they're lucky.
The smoke is what puts you to sleep. So if you don't smell the smoke or hear the commotion or have some other way of waking up, that alert from the smoke detector puts you behind the 8-ball immediately. The fire doubles in size every 30 seconds.
For the police, only Sergeant Brown had more than 4 years of experience, but they reacted without hesitation. And St. Andrew didn't hesitate to thank every one of those first responders.
Hey, thank you very much. God bless you.
The fire chief says it was an overloaded power strip on the first floor that sparked this fire. Reporting live in Gloversville, Asa Stackel, News Channel 13. Jim, back to you. Lawmakers of the Capitol have figured out a way to get paid twice. After getting reelected, you retire at the end of one term and then you start again the next day. We tracked down lawmakers who are doing it, and they say they are not doing it because of greed. Assemblyman David McDonough is drawing both a pension and a paycheck, but he doesn't want to be called a double dipper.
I'm not a double dipper, I'm a partial dipper.
According to documents from the state, McDonough is one of 4 state lawmakers elected after 1995 who are drawing both a pension and a salary. There's a limit for these lawmakers. After they make $30,000 in salary on the year, by about springtime, their monthly pension checks stop. McDonough says he did it, and you hear this argument a lot from so-called double dippers, so his wife would get his pension when he died.
I would not have done it that soon, except for the fact that I was 5 years older than my wife, and I figured I would pass first, and I wanted to protect her.
Enter Suffolk County Assemblyman Michael Fitzpatrick. He isn't a so-called double dipper, but he understands their motivation.
I'm complaining about the rule. They're acting in their own best interest. That's human nature. You would do it, I would do it, anybody would do that.
That's why Fitzpatrick has a bill to change the rules. He wants to do away with pensions as we know them for elected officials.
Elected officials should only be in a defined contribution or a 401k style pension platform.
Remember, we made that distinction about 1995 before, and that's because lawmakers elected before 95 can collect both their full salary and their full pension. That's these 10 lawmakers, according to the documents from the state. Full salary, full pensions. After 32 years in the legislature, Senator Jim Seward has a $72,000 pension plus a $110,000 salary, a grand total of $182,000 a year.
I did exercise that option to protect my spouse. I think many people in my situation would do the same.
Seward has a unique position. He was diagnosed with cancer in 2016. He too filed for his pension so his wife would get it even if he passed away. But Seward says making new rules for the other lawmakers was the right move.
In terms of changing the practice, it has been changed since 1995, and I think it's appropriate that that happens.
Changing the law to stop current lawmakers from so-called double dipping might take a constitutional amendment because it deals with pensions promised to these people. And unless that happens, these lawmakers will have the option to draw both. And if you had the option, what would you do? We reached out to every single one of these lawmakers, some of them several times. McDonough and Fitzpatrick are the only ones who met with us willingly. With Waste Watchers Investigates, Asa Stackel, News Channel 13.
For most hikers, becoming a 46er is a lifelong goal.
But a girl from Queensbury climbed to the top of all 46 of the highest peaks in the Adirondacks before her 5th birthday. Here's her story. These little feet have hiked all of the highest. Maeve Nesbitt is now the youngest 46er on record, and her parents say no, they didn't carry her once.
People say, did she climb all of that? And we've made comments that if you were with her on the mountain at any point, anybody who passed us on the trail, and you saw her in action, you knew that she climbed every step of the way.
Wow, slippery. These are sure slippery.
Maeve is just 38 pounds. A hiker's backpack could weigh more. She's about half the height of the average 46er, but she might have twice the energy. Maeve's grandma calls her a mountain goat.
It can be humbling at times, especially when she gets to a rocky section and above tree line, she gets really excited and she just goes for an all-out sprint.
Maeve started her journey last summer when she was 3 with Cascade and Porter. 13 months later, she'd done all the highest peaks in the Adirondacks, beating the 5-year-old who used to hold the record and finishing on Big Slide. Your favorite one of these peaks, you were just telling me. Which one is it?
Big Slide.
So Maeve is a 46er. She is a natural climber. Amazing. But also amazing is that this isn't Maeve's first time on top of all those high peaks. Siobhan and Lee carried Maeve on their backs up all 46 before this journey. Hiking is part of their story. They did the 46 for the first time together. Now Siobhan is on her 8th time doing them. And that's why Maeve wanted to become a 46er herself.
Like Mommy and Daddy are.
All those grueling all-day hikes are easier said than done for a 4-year-old. Maybe it's just being out in nature that makes it worth it for Maeve.
What you got there, Maeve?
Caterpillar, funny caterpillar.
Or maybe it's the views.
So just stand there, you know, and we'll just be taking it all in, and, you know, she's just in complete awe.
Or maybe Maeve was just made for the mountains.
You don't know why you love the mountains?
I just love them.
So apparently when Maeve summits a peak, her parents said that she goes, "This is the best day ever."
Really?
Every time.
Every time.
So when she got to the top of the 46, she was kind of disappointed that this was the last one. So now they're taking on all 115 of the highest peaks in the Northeast.
Incredible. And then she's got this new big adventure coming next month, right?
Mm-hmm. Kindergarten.
Kindergarten. That's a big deal, too.
Big obstacle.
All right. Very impressive little girl.
From WNYT Albany, News Channel 13 live at noon begins right now.
Good afternoon, I'm Asa Stackel. We'll begin with the latest from Governor Cuomo. He announced minutes ago live on News Channel 13, New York now has more than 30,000 confirmed cases of the coronavirus. Now the positive news. The governor says the state is getting closer to coming up with a plan to provide enough hospital beds and staff to treat the expected amount of coronavirus cases at the height of the outbreak in New York State. Governor Cuomo yesterday gave us the state's new projection. He says the state will need 140,000 beds. New York currently has 53,000 beds. Between his call for hospitals to increase capacity, 4 makeshift hospitals in buildings like Manhattan's Javits Center, and a plan to turn downstate dorms into hospitals, he says that could be approximately 120,000 hospital beds. The governor told us yesterday, we have not yet been able to flatten the curve. In fact, the rate of increase of new cases in the state had gone up. Now he is seeing some projections that suggest the rate of hospitalizations will decrease.
This past Sunday, the projection was that hospitalizations were doubling every 2 days, okay? On Monday, the numbers suggested that the hospitalizations were doubling every 3.4 days. On Tuesday, the projection suggested that the hospitalizations were doubling every 4.7 days. Now, that is almost too good to be true, but the theory is, given the density that we're dealing with, it spreads very quickly, but if you reduce the density, you can reduce the spread very quickly.
You heard the governor. Too good to be true. The governor cautioned those are just projections, and he's seen them fluctuate. He expects the apex of the curve in New York, the greatest load on hospitals, will come in 21 days. Nationally, an agreement is finally in place on a $2 trillion stimulus package. We told you that this morning. As the day goes on, we're starting to learn more about the details. And here's NBC's Tom Costello.
Overnight on Capitol Hill, Senate leaders striking a deal, agreeing to a massive $2 trillion coronavirus stimulus package, the largest in U.S. history. The deal, which must still be voted on by both the Senate and the House, includes $100 billion of relief funding for hospitals, $200 billion for domestic priorities like transportation, childcare, seniors, and veterans, $500 billion for major corporate loans, and a small business rescue package that's over $350 billion. The bill will also provide a one-time $1,200 check to Americans who make $75,000 a year or less. The Treasury Secretary says President Trump will absolutely sign it. Meanwhile, the president hopes the country will be back up and running full steam ahead by Easter, just 2.5 weeks from now, despite repeated cautions from the nation's top health experts. However, his own task force advisor, Dr. Anthony Fauci, says that deadline must be flexible.
On a literally day-by-day and week-by-week basis, you need to evaluate the feasibility of what you're trying to do.
Dr. Fauci adding there would not be a blanket recommendation for the entire country since cases vary from state to state. New York remains the biggest coronavirus hotspot, accounting for more than half of the country's cases and nearly a third of the deaths. The World Health Organization warns the U.S. has the potential to overtake Italy as the global epicenter of the coronavirus pandemic. The president also doubling down on the idea that economic instability caused by the virus could be worse than the pandemic itself. Tom Costello, NBC News.
North Country Congresswoman Asa Stackel says she wants China to be held accountable for what she calls the coronavirus cover-up. Stackel introduced a resolution yesterday. She said there is no doubt that China's unconscionable decision to orchestrate an elaborate cover-up led to the death of thousands of people. This resolution calls for China to provide compensation for that harm, loss, and destruction their arrogance brought upon the rest of the world. Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri introduced similar legislation in the Senate. Now, locally, Albany County's daily briefing on coronavirus cases wrapped up a short time ago. The total confirmed cases are now up to 142 from 136 yesterday. Now, keep this in mind. They attribute the relatively small increase to a dramatic reduction in testing. 10 people are now hospitalized. There are 557 mandatory quarantines at this time and 633 precautionary. But that number will drop dramatically tomorrow.
The Farnsworth middle school students come off, and that's like 400 of them. So that number is going to drop tomorrow, and none of them tested positive.
I would strongly encourage parents that just because that date is here, they should not change the behavior that their children, that they hopefully have been enforcing with their children. Children should continue to stay at home, middle school children, high school children.
Health Commissioner Elizabeth Whalen says the number of patients in the ICU has dropped from 3 to 2. That one patient improved enough to come out of intensive care. Now, not all counties in the Capital Region are issuing daily updates. If you want to see how many cases are confirmed in your county, go to WNYT.com. We have a link set up to the State Health Department's website. You can also check your county health department's website. A couple from Clifton Park is living out a nightmare right now. They're currently stuck in Peru along with more than 1,000 other Americans. Emily DeVito spoke with them, and she joins us in studio to share their story. Emily.
Asa, Steve and Vanessa Guthier left for Peru on March 6th. There weren't as many coronavirus cases then, and no one had advised them not to travel. They planned their trip a year ago and say they never expected it to turn out like this.
What started out as a picture-perfect trip for Vanessa and Steve Guthier quickly took a turn.
I'm just really, I don't know, like scared. I don't want to stay here.
On March 15th, to combat the coronavirus pandemic, the president of Peru gave travelers less than 24 hours to leave the country before they would close the borders.
We basically heard from other Americans on the street. That's the limit of how we found out.
Yeah.
Nothing from the embassy, nothing on the news. If you didn't happen to speak Spanish and see the Peruvian president talking, then we would have no idea.
The couple tried to get a flight out immediately, but they say the airports were in chaos and the airline shut down around noon that day. They say luckily they've been able to stay with Vanessa's aunt in Lima. A few days ago, they say they had a chance to get out, but you had to pay cash for the airline ticket.
Starbury thought it was a scam, so we kind of just didn't do it at all. But then turns out it was actually legit. So they did leave last night, so we missed our chance.
For now, they've been waiting to hear from the U.S. Embassy. They've been calling every day. The embassy tweeted they expect to return around 400 U.S. citizens today. They're prioritizing older adults and people with underlying health issues. They also tweeted the U.S. Embassy and U.S. Department of State will not rest until we've worked through these issues with Peru to get our people back to the United States. The Guthiers say it's essential they get back to New York because they're both healthcare workers.
Our job needs us right now. We're desperate to go back home. People need our help, and we're stuck here. I mean, and I know that the governor over there is asking for help with healthcare professionals, but there's nothing we could do here if no one's helping us.
Now, the president in Peru ordered the borders to be closed for 15 days, so that will be about until April 1st. However, Vanessa and Steve said they are worried they could extend it. Stay with News Channel 13 as we continue to follow this couple's journey back to New York. Asa?
All right, let's hope they get home. Thank you, Emily. Now, I talked to a pharmacist who made it out of Vietnam just in time. Joseph Bertino from Guilderland had been in the country volunteering in universities and at hospitals since March 3rd. Just as Vietnam made the decision to quarantine foreigners for 14 days, he caught a flight out of Hanoi to Singapore. Then, he barely made it out of Singapore on a flight before that country closed its borders.
It's a nice place to be, but to be in a hotel room for 2 weeks in Singapore is not necessarily my idea of a good time. So,
Bertino is now self-isolating at his home just to be safe. Now into breaking news out of Troy, where police say 2 people were found dead just a few hours ago inside a home at 1905 Highland Avenue. They say they found drug supplies in the home, so they are treating these as drug overdose deaths, but an investigation is still underway. No word yet on the names of the 2 people found. We are following up on a deadly police-involved shooting in Schenectady yesterday. State police are investigating, and they did not have any updates for us this morning when we checked. 2 Schenectady officers are on administrative leave. Police say they responded to a fight between a man and a woman at an apartment on Albany Street when the man opened a door and extended a gun into the hallway. That's when 2 officers opened fire. The man died later at Ellis Hospital. The woman was not injured. Still ahead, the good news about a hot bass, a new study in-house. Also, after a 2,100-point day yesterday, we'll look live at the stock market to see how it's doing this noontime. And we had the breaking news this morning, and now we are learning more about Prince Charles. He just tested positive for the coronavirus. We'll be right back.
Coverage you can trust with Asa Stackel and meteorologist Neil Lostano. This is News Channel 13 live at noon.